2, go.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Caleb Hefford. I'm owner of EscapeCorporate.com. What we do is we help traditional corporate style sales reps break into the online high ticket space. Okay. So I'm here with Jessica, who I've been working with for the past couple months. We're going to talk a little bit about her journey, what she's gone through, what that is like for someone that was a corporate veteran. And we're just going to kind of get an idea of what it would like and what that transition really takes to find success in the high ticket space. Okay. Go ahead, Jessica, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I'm Jessica. I'm from Indiana. So I am excited to share with you my journey and so it can maybe impact your life as well as much as it has mine.
Awesome. So, Jessica, how long have we been working together, roughly?
Mm, Probably 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you doing before you sort of got interested in high ticket sales and the online space? What specifically were you doing? Tell us a little bit about your job and kind of like what your day to day was like.
Yeah. So I was working in the kind of corporate business development space with marketing. So I was helping national companies kind of partner with other companies and grow. And so I was chasing the traveling all the time and being gone all the time from home to try to make, more money as a single mom. And so felt like I was never home and I was always gone. The money was good. It just I was extremely busy a lot. So um corporate space just chasing that hamster wheel, I feel like.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And how many hours roughly would you say you were working in that space as a single mom overall each week?
Well, in business development, it's a never ending job. So even at night, after the kids are going to bed, you're documenting, getting ready for your next day, preparing your next week. So it's a constant. You learn to kind of try to ebb and flow with your own life and work life. And that
Mhm.
was the hardest part. I never got a break.
Okay. Well, and some people they work super hard, but it pays off in the end, right? At least
Yeah.
they're getting a huge financial reward. So, what do you feel like your ratio was with how much work you were putting in versus maybe how much you were actually getting compensated, or maybe how much you felt valued for that work, or actually
Mhm.
felt like you were going somewhere?
Well, they give you this dream. You get a salary, so you have to be comfortable with the salary, and then they give you the dream of what commission's going to be like if you do extra or go above and beyond. So I think part of me was, well, I'll put all the effort in I can every month and chase the commission because that was the higher pay. It wasn't consistent, and it definitely took my energy out every month and
Okay.
trying to chase it.
And with having to drive all around and taking your energy out, trying to putting all that effort in just to sort of not put words in your mouth, but just make it by.
Yeah.
What's that sort of like trying to have a family and kids and navigate both of those, juggling both those things?
Uh, Very difficult.
Tough, right? Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
difficult.
And so, why, just in a few words, why do you feel like it was important to you that you had to find something different or an alternative to what you were doing?
Because I was missing my children's childhood, trying to give them a better future, and also not giving myself. I've never felt secure, so I just felt like I was continuing to chase something that I couldn't reach.
Yeah. And how long do you feel like you were
Mhm.
trying to? Well, first off, how long were you in the corporate space, roughly?
8 years.
Okay. And how much of that were you trying to get out or find something better?
I probably the whole time I was in it
Yeah.
because I don't know if any of you are single parents, but getting on a plane and flying across the country for work is not most ideal when you're the only person providing for them.
Yeah.
It's a lot
Yeah.
of risk and even for the reward.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Totally. Okay. And sort of so most of the time you were okay. What I was gonna ask is, you tried a couple other things, right? What
Hmm.
did you try to sort of get out of that space?
Yeah, so I got my real estate license,
Okay.
went in as a broker, really tried to make that work. I gone into behavioral health. So I worked in trying to get patients into treatment, which was a huge passion. I've always been passionate about helping people.
Mm.
And so I was kind of searching out things that I could make money at that would impact people's lives. And then getting, my background is in psychology. So when I was growing up, I expected to go to college, get a degree. And so I went further and got a master's degree to try to make more money as well. So working two jobs, and trying to make make ends meet and live above that as
Yeah.
a single person is
Yeah.
really
And,
difficult.
and of course, like everybody wants freedom and they want to make good money, but like the goal is to be able to do something that you're passionate about, that you feel like actually makes an impact or that matters, and get rewarded for that financially, right? And
Yeah.
so when you're sort of like you're finding that value in your environment, but you're not being rewarded financially, you get almost at a crossroads where you don't really know what to do, right?
Yeah.
And you have to either sacrifice the passion for the money, or you have to sacrifice the money for the passion. And I feel like that's a big narrative nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's true, right? And I think maybe after we've worked together that you may share that perspective a little bit. But um, okay, so why don't we transition a little bit to 6 months ago, right?
Hmm.
Found out about sort of sales, high ticket sales, what that is, sort of the online space. Tell us a little bit about your job right now.
Okay. Um, I've always been the type of person that's not afraid of taking a little bit of risk, as long as and I do believe that there's bigger things out there for me than what I've been experiencing. So when high ticket sales space came across, and I looked into, I truly believe if you have a product or something you're selling, you believe in, that's, you're helping people. I knew that I wanted to give it a try. And so many unique things going on right now. Why wouldn't it work? I believed in it. And so I decided to invest in myself. And that was the hardest part, because a lot of people want free training, or, I just paid all this money for college and a master's degree. And here I am investing in another training. But a lot of people, even younger than me and my age, were successful. And I was seeing that. And so I truly believe if you invest in yourself, you're more likely to really care and put the effort in.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
it's it's kind of scary in investing in something new, right? Especially when you've invested in things in the past, maybe they didn't work
and they
out.
didn't work
Maybe
out.
you already invested in a 4 year or maybe even 6 to 8 year education, and now you got to try something new.
Hmm.
And you go into it, and of course, despite what people say, of course, it's still right. Not, you still have to sort of take a little bit of a leap. So it was scary,
Yeah.
right? Once you made that leap and you started, what did that feel like emotionally? Like, were you excited? Were you nervous? Were you scared? Overwhelmed? Like, what was that like?
Well, I had done sales in person for many years, and I think just understanding how to communicate was what made my adrenaline rush and anxiety, because we as a society kind of lose track of how we communicate with people.
Hmm.
And so I knew I was going to be good at it. I love talking to people. I love building relationships, and um, so I guess just getting on the other end of the Zoom, because
Yeah.
it's really nice. You don't have to go in person anymore. You get to have these natural conversations, and people are used to the Zoom aspect anyway. So I experienced that a little bit in corporate world. But yeah, I was excited. My adrenaline rush. I mean, I knew that this could possibly be what changed my life, and so um, I just knew I needed to go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a space, right, that it can be kind of, not everybody knows what it is, right? There's high ticket sales or remote high ticket sales. And so a lot of people get their, bad taste in their mouth when they hear the word sales, maybe because of a bad experience they had on a car lot or in a shop
Hmm.
or something like that, right? And so it can be hard to jump into that and think, maybe I'll make some money, maybe it'll work, and also how people are going to perceive me. Am I actually going to be helping people? All of this stuff, right? And so,
I
just for those sort of that aren't super familiar with the space, right? There are so many companies that have these amazing products that are selling things online more efficiently with a more efficient schedule. And so that might not make sense to the viewer. So why don't you tell them a little bit
Mhm.
about just sort of like what your daily schedule looks like, right? You don't have to. We
Yeah.
can go into the company you work for and everything, but what's your daily schedule look like right now? Right? Because
Yeah.
we talked about your old schedule. What does your daily schedule look like right now, day to day?
Yeah. And I want to say something too
Yeah.
back to sales quickly. I feel like sales is all around us. And so it's a part of our everyday life. To think, one thing I'm trying to make an impact is changing the way people view sales, because it is a way to serve. Everyone's going to buy something. If you are selling something that's truly going to impact your life, that's your impact to them, and watching them grow and change and have something that benefits their life. So I'm very dedicated into changing the way people view sales, but my day to day life is pretty like some people would think it's magic. I wake up, I take about, I don't start work until 10 a.m. I get to see my team from all over the world. So I have friends in so many different places now with great mindsets instead of this stress ball that I was centered around.
Mhm.
And everyone's excited to get on the meetings. Everyone's encouraging each other because we're all chasing dreams finally, around a community of dreamers. And then I take, at the first I was like, I'm going to fill my schedule with all the calls in the world. So I did get kind of attached to that. The more money you can make, the better, right? But as I got my savings built up in the first month, first like 2 weeks, I started taking maybe 3 or 4 calls a day. So I work until the kids get out of school. I go pick them up, and then I disappear from work and I focus on them. And that's been not only the money, but that's been the greatest blessing for me.
Yeah, and you're
Yeah.
working from home too, right? And so
Mhm.
being able to be close to your kids and still be able to perform at work, that's just something that, and financially, right? That's something a lot of people dream of
Yeah.
because
That is
they have to,
possible.
yeah, they have to be away from their kids, especially if they have
Mhm.
little ones, right? I mean, if they're,
Mhm.
if they're 15, 16, that's different. But if they have little ones, being able to even just keep them home here, here and then, or be home with them as
Mhm.
they're growing up.
Mhm.
What's that like to be able to do that and actually still make a pretty good income, which we'll get into in a second?
Yeah, well, for the first time this year, I'm planning a trip with them. In the corporate space, taking a vacation is like a weakness. You don't let anyone pass you and you don't take a break. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I finally have the money to take my kids on a vacation together and um, take a break.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not putting wear and tear on I was driving 8,000 miles a month, um, just chasing uncertainty. And so I'm excited that I don't have to put that wear and tear on my car, that I get to take care of my house, that I get to actually work and travel. Like I can literally work from anywhere. So that's another cool aspect too. Um, we could go on vacation and I could have a couple work days if I wanted to. And I
Yeah.
never had that
What's it like being able to
opportunity.
just open a laptop and take calls and at least have the potential to make money whenever you pop your laptop open?
Yeah, I'll do it for the rest of my life.
Yeah. So that brings us to the fun part, right? This is what
Yeah.
everybody's wondering, right? We're going to talk a little bit about this. Give us a rough range of what you were, how you were doing financially in the corporate space relative to how much you were working, right?
Hmm.
How were you doing in that space
Okay.
financially?
So, salary was probably around 80 to 85,000 a year. So, that was what I was looking at. And of course, corporate is sometimes built for burnout. So a lot of people don't stay at a certain business for over a year. So you float around a lot and chasing higher salaries,
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
And every now and then, every month, you could chase the leaderboard and maybe get 2 or 3,000 in commission. So I was averaging about, probably about 2,600 every 2 weeks with insurance being taken out,
Okay.
and then maybe $1,000 to a couple thousand every month if I was top of the leaderboard. And I grew up with such a mindset that was you're chasing the 100,000 a year salary. That's
Yeah,
what you're
that
doing.
100K mark is like you've made it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Six
Yeah.
figures. You can tell all your high school
Yeah.
friends and everything. And 2,600 every 2 weeks, that's a reasonable, decent living, right?
Yeah. And most
But
people,
if you have three kids, that's tough. And things are always changing, getting more expensive, and it can be tough. Nobody wants to just survive, right?
no.
Deep down, everybody wants to thrive, right? Um, so, you were, in other words, you were making it by, right? You were doing your job as a mom and just, taking care of things, and you were doing good, right? You had enough money.
Not enough that I could, because of daycare, paying for being away. That
Yeah.
was the hardest part.
And let's even take that out of the equation, right? Let's take, the kids and the lifestyle and the payments out of the equation, right? You probably felt a little bit capped and stuck anyway, just on your potential and your income,
Yes,
right?
very much so. I mean, when they put you on a salary amount, it's giving you a value
Yeah.
number. And I
Okay.
don't want a value number.
Yeah. So let's fast forward 5 or 6 months, right? Because of
Yeah.
course you put in a little bit of the work, but we're about 6 months in now.
A little less.
A little
Going
less than 6
back, yeah.
months. Yeah, let's talk about how you're doing now financially, right? So I know that we just finished a month, the 30th of a month, so we just started a new month, right? So it's kind
Mhm.
of a good time to do this.
Yeah.
You can tell us a little bit about how you did last month in the role that you're in financially on your sales team and everything. Just go ahead and tell us a little bit about that as much as you want to share.
Okay. So when I started out, I really didn't know what to expect. My first like 2 days, I was already top of the leaderboard, just having conversations about 30 or 40 minutes, and then sharing the product, finding how it connects to them, and then closing a deal. And the first time I closed my first deal, I like when the camera went off, my heart was racing, and I just started crying. I was like, I made $1,500 in 40 minutes. And I had done therapy one-on-one. We get paid like 165 from insurance 2 months later, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just did 40 minutes and made over $1,000. And then I was hooked. And so my first month, which I would consider now kind of lower end, I would made over 8,000 in my first month, which is double what I made at my other job in a full month of work. And um, I was it was like, now I need to work on my mindset,
Yeah.
because now I'm seeing things I've never seen before.
Yeah, when you sort of break out of that mold or paradigm that's put on you, right? Because nobody ever talks about making, you know, that much every month, especially relative to work, right?
Yeah.
Or they might not think it's possible, or they might think it takes a long time, or XYZ.
hmm Well,
What
and
did
then,
you tell us a little bit what you brought home or what you killed this last month
yeah, so this like
and where
month,
you ended up in your
this is
company?
fully month 4 into my very first high ticket job. So I've not had any other high ticket jobs in this specific space of software. But I was the top of the leaderboard against veteran sales last month, and I made my first ever over 15,000.
Say that again. How much? What was your commission check? What's your commission check for this last month?
15.5.
And actually, right?
Actually,
Like,
yeah. I had a goal. I set a high goal for myself that try to bring in 150,000 in revenue for the company. And my goal was to close one sale every day. Just take calls, and you it, it was incredible to break 10 and then to even break 15.
yeah.
And now, yeah.
And I know that we spoke, and your goal originally was just to, if you could get anywhere close to that 10K in a month mark, that was like awesome.
Yeah, plus I sell a product that I have had to grow to learn how to sell. I come from a behavioral health hospital background, so it's possible with anything out there, and there's so many jobs. Like there's so many opportunities out there for this space to help companies grow remotely.
Yeah. And so
And
before we move on, just so from June 1st to June 30th,
mhm.
you made
15.5.
$15,000. Okay. What does that
15,500.
feel like, right? If you close your eyes and think about that number and maybe what you made for so many years before, what is that like? I
Yeah.
know might be a little
Mhm.
emotional, which is okay, but
Yeah.
what's that like?
I always looked at what I needed to make to pay all the bills. So I think for me, I see months in security and finally have a savings, and I have twins. And so it's just exciting to see like that grow and finally have a savings where I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. And um, it just makes me kind of speechless.
Yeah. And how many people in your life told you it was possible to make that much in a single month or even over the course of a few months?
One, you.
Yeah. Thanks. That means a lot. And so, right, this can be, once again, it can be a confusing space to navigate. Okay. So what would you tell someone that maybe is, they don't really, they're thinking about jumping into high ticket sales. Maybe they've been in corporate for a while. Maybe they sell door to door, or maybe they're just kind of stuck in this corporate grind.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give them? And what would you say to them if they're sort of on the fence about this whole, not even just, maybe working with me or somebody else, but just to the industry as a whole? What would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, I didn't just leave my job and jump into it. I would say to give yourself a little bit of a leeway. But if you've been sitting there for so many years thinking about it and wondering, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Sit there and still continue to do the same thing that you're unhappy with, or actually try something and fail and have something to be upset about, real. And so I think everyone should give it a try and then tell me it didn't work,
Yeah.
because I guarantee it will. And you can sell anything if you just care about the other person on the other end.
And you know what I hear a lot, and I know maybe I think you've spoken to some of your family members and friends about what you've been doing, and maybe what you hear a lot about sales is like, oh, I could never do that, or I just don't want to do sales, or I don't like that, right?
Hmm.
What would you tell to them, right? Or what would you say to these people? Because I mean, some people think you have to be extroverted, you have to be super pushy. You know what I mean? And like, would you say that's the case, right?
No, I would say you just be human,
Yeah,
connect, and just be yourself. And there's no, everyone can do this.
yeah,
It's just if you really want it.
yeah. Tell me a little bit about the conversations you're having with the people
Mm,
that you're actually selling to every
yeah.
day, right? And why are these? What makes these conversations maybe enjoyable or powerful? And why do you actually enjoy doing this, right? And what are these conversations like? How long do they take? What do you talk about? What sort of happens during this conversation?
Yeah. I think it's a different world than the negativity you get sometimes in business to business, corporate, or working in behavioral health. But what's nice is you get centered around people that have dreams. People stop dreaming for some reason. And either they get stuck that this is all I'm going to get every month. And in this business, it's endless. So there's room for dreams. And I think that's what's so nice. The people that I talk to every day are, they're high achieving. I realize there's things out there I didn't even know. I'm talking to people from all over the world. So I learn different cultures, make connections, meet them. I've been able to stay in people's Airbnbs with my clients. Like there's so much opportunity, and we're human. We're meant to connect, we're meant to build relationships. And so now I feel like it's not only flowing into stranger relationships, but it's helping me with my own personal family relationships.
Totally.
And
And when you're in these conversations with prospects, right? They're brought to you from maybe an advertisement or social media page, right? In
mhm,
sales world, we'd call them maybe warm leads,
warm
or at
leads,
least
yeah.
people that they're already sort of interested, right? So it's a different conversation. So they
Mhm.
already know what they're going to be talking to you about. It's just sort of right. You have to navigate whether they're going to actually jump on board with this type of thing. So during those conversations, right? Do you ever feel like you're straight up manipulating these people, or do you feel like you're convincing them to buy something that you wouldn't buy yourself, or that do you feel like, when you close these deals, would you say you feel good at night, or would you feel like maybe you screwed someone over, or do you feel like these are conversations that are actually like impactful?
No, I feel great at night. I use the product myself, bought it myself. I invested in myself. I think that's key. If you're gonna really want to make an impact, you got to know how it works and how it affected you first. But I sleep great at night. I actually think my product's worth more than I sell it for. So that's the problem I have, is I think it's worth way more than what I sell it for. And so I look forward to seeing the value go up more.
Yeah, and
Because
so we don't have to talk about the company too much or anything, but like rough range, if you gave us a range, maybe
mhm.
just a range, you don't have to give us a number or anything, maybe like just what you're selling every day costs and
Yeah,
what you're actually like helping these people move forward on and purchase. What's
yeah.
a rough range?
A rough range for my product is about 15 to 25,000.
Okay. What's it like actually sort of hearing that number come out of your mouth when you're selling to people
It's
or
sorry, I don't mean to laugh, because the first time I had someone pay me 25,000 or 15,000 in one setting over the phone, I was like, you learn that there is abundance in the world, and your world is not as small as it is. And so the first time coming out with the amount wasn't as weird, because I knew the product was worth that. It was just more different to see someone pay for it.
Yeah.
and that money come across when I know, and then being able to reach out to them and know that they're doing well. Like I don't just sell, I follow up and I check in on my clients too.
Yeah.
So
At the end of that first like 45-minute conversation that you had or sales call, right? Because of course, the first couple, you got to get the rocks out of your mouth. It can be a little nerve-wracking, that type of thing. But the first time you got to the end of the call, right, you pitched a price and somebody actually said yes and moved forward and paid you that amount, 15,000, 10,000, 5,000, whatever it was.
mhm.
What was that like? Was that crazy? Did that feel weird? Right?
Yeah, you kind of just like got to shake out all the emotions
Yeah.
because you don't know how to feel it because you're like, I just made more in a day than I ever made. And so you're like, wow, let's see what the future brings now. And it's only been 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much more open do you feel like you are or to maybe what your own potential is, right? Versus what you thought it was before?
I always capped my potential for some reason mentally. Like, oh, you'll get to 100,000, you're safe, you stay there or whatever, salary cap or minus. And now I'm like, I believe anything is possible. So I really do work on that daily, but I do think that even like I love where I work. So I feel blessed to be where I'm at. Everyone does in this space. They love where they work. But I could do anything. I really do. Now that I've uh, gone through this in the past, like learning how to sell. More of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, last couple things I'll touch on here is, obviously you jumped into this space with 2 feet and it was a little bit nerve wracking. And it's not easy, right? Of course it's worth it, but it's not always easy. So how important do you feel like it was that you had someone to sort of to guide you into where you're at now, or at least have someone to lean on, ask questions to, maybe ask for some advice? How much of an impact do you think that had?
Well, I'm just going to say that's the reason why I am where I am in 4 months and not 2 years. Because, I mean, you could sit there and try to learn it yourself. But if you really want to learn from someone else that's being successful and have a step-by-step process that's easier instead of like trying to learn yourself, I wouldn't be where I'm at in 4 months. And I didn't have a year to learn on my own.
Yeah.
Like I was ready to get out of where I was. And most people probably feel that way. They're ready now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you want it now, training is the best way to go. It really is. It gets you not only the connections in the space, the high connections to be on a high ticket offer, but also, it kind of takes the legwork out of you can learn easier having someone work with you.
Cool. Well, let's end with this.
Yeah.
Anyone out there watching this that maybe wants to hit their first 10K in a month or start working remotely or even just break into sales, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them, right? That they look up to where you're at now and that's something they want to achieve themselves. What would you say to them? What advice would you give?
What do you have to lose? I mean, you're already wanting to leave. You've already 1 foot out the door. Don't you want to be somewhere you can be all in? Like that's the best part for me is I'm not looking elsewhere for something else. I found where I want to be. And now I can take that money and do my passions. My passions don't have to be a job.
Awesome. Well, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for all of this. Once again, my name's Caleb. The company's called escapecorporate.com. If anyone's sort of more interested about Jessica's journey or my journey about how I got in the space, there's plenty of links and everything to reach out to me to learn more. But once again, escapecorporate.com, go to the website. There's plenty of stuff there. I'm on YouTube, Caleb Hefford. And would love to work with more people and just sort of, see more stories like this. So thanks, Jess.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb.